Welcome to A Course to Retirement with Grand Rapids Certified Financial Planner Ron Corser. Ron Corser and Associates are planning today for the potential of tomorrow.
And welcome into the program. This is your Course to Retirement, Grand Rapids, your resource for that common sense approach to planning for your financial, your investment, your retirement future. Well, he is certified financial planner, president and founder of Ron Corser and Associates. Ron Corser, once again with us. Ron, welcome back in.
Good morning, and good morning to everybody listening to today's program. I'm reminded of an old Chinese proverb. It says, may you live in interesting times. And I think everybody would raise their hand and say, oh yeah, these are interesting. Cowabunga. So this is already shaping up to be a really interesting year. There's probably going to be some things come down the road that we're all going to say, wow, I never saw that. Some things will happen to say, that's what I thought might happen. But fact is we're kind of always, even in great years, we're always going into somewhat uncharted territory because none of us have a crystal ball. So we're going to talk a little bit about what some people are concerned about, what lies ahead. And what I'm going to emphasize on today's program is planning, because planning is important for two reasons. It takes into consideration what's predictable, to the extent that we know things are coming down the road. For example, we probably know that sometime in the near future, taxes could increase. And then there's always the unexpected thing. But what we're trying to figure out is what can we control and what can't we control? So today we're going to cover a lot of issues and try to make sure you're prepared to not only talk about some of these things, but to take some steps, maybe to be proactive, to protect yourself going forward, but also to take advantage of some things. In the markets and in the world, good news, bad news happens, but it's always possible to take advantage of whatever's going on if you have somebody to guide you. And that's what we do. We try to guide folks along the way to give them the best opportunity to do that. So stay tuned. Again, if you have any questions about the future, about what's coming down the road, what we see in our crystal ball that has got a little crack in it, give us a call at 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. Be more than happy to figure out what your questions are and to how to perhaps give you a good answer for that. So give us a call, 616-301-2581.
Ron Corser and his team always standing by, looking forward to helping and assisting in any way they can. That's what they are here for, Grand Rapids savers and investors, those planning for your financial future, taking it seriously. If you're retirement minded or even already in the retirement community, you got to have that plan. Ron, as a certified financial planner, emphasizes the importance of having the plan each and every week on the program, talking about different angles, different aspects of the plan, different components that make up the plan, and why it's all important for your course to retirement, and always offering to put the course to retirement plan together for you. Now, that's unique, specific, individual to you, but the process of arriving at how to put that plan together, it starts with a phone call. So give that call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, or you can go online, roncorser.com, roncorser.com. And Ron, we always look ahead as planners, and ahead next week, International Women's Day. So maybe just as we start the program here, a tip of the cap to the ladies out there, the ladies in our lives, the ladies who are listening to the program, maybe from a financial planning perspective, a lot of the same issues or similar issues maybe spoken about in different ways, but there are a couple things maybe to take you off your course just a little bit in what you had planned, but maybe a couple of things that women in particular need to pay attention to in planning a little bit differently than us men.
Yeah, I want to confirm with you that, shout out to all the ladies, my wife too. She's an important part of our financial planning as a couple. And I always encourage couples to talk about the money. I know sometimes people say, well, that's what Charlie takes care of, or he does that. And I always say to the ladies when they come into our office, whether it's the first time we've met or they're long-term clients, I tell them, I say, ladies, you're smarter than the average bear. You know what's going on. And I'm glad you're here so we can talk about things. Because you know what's really important about, yeah, I can agree with you. the needs, the goals of men are not all that different from women. But here's the one big difference. Women have a tendency to live a whole lot longer than us guys. And because of that, it creates some planning challenges. I had a really good buddy who was a minister, and I was questioning, we were talking about longevity and things in the Bible. And I said to him, why is it women live longer than men generally? And he said it was just his opinion after studying scriptures that God lets them live a little longer because after we're gone, they need some time to recover from all the wonderfulness of being married to us. And I kind of said, you know what? I agree with that. I absolutely do. And so we're going to go forward that. Women do tend to live a little longer. And that doesn't mean you change the way you plan. It just means that's part of what you put into a plan. And the sooner you do that, the more effective the plan will probably be over a long period of time. Because what's the one issue? Excuse me. Women living a lot longer than the men, generally speaking. It's called something called longevity. And longevity meaning if you live a long, long time, it's a risk multiplier. It means you're going to see good markets, bad markets, life, death, happiness, sadness, taxes going up, taxes going down, maybe not going down anymore, but changes in tax structure and things like that. So longevity it impacts a lot of different risks and can make them a little worse. So in dealing with longevity, one of the keys is to just do a little more serious and careful planning. Specifically, have a retirement plan, not just an investment plan. And a retirement plan would include an investment strategy that makes sense. It would include, most importantly, where's the income going to come from in retirement? We've talked a lot about this. We really have. Most important thing that you can plan for in retirement is to make sure you have all the income you need every month to maintain your lifestyle. Now, you don't need $1 million or $20 billion or things like that if you have a modest lifestyle. If you're like Peter, who's the producer of our radio program, we've talked about this. He needs $1 million a year just to stay afloat. So that $10 million that he's saved so far, he's got to work a little more on it. And I'll keep you in my prayers on going forward with that, Peter.
We have a high expectation for lifestyle to maintain and live up to here, Ron.
You know, so, and that's
radio life
America,
is expensive.
That's what makes America great, man. You can do it.
Yeah.
So let's start to look at things. There's a lot of information to cover, and there's probably not going to be enough time, but we're going to go through it. As always, here's the offer we make. If you have any questions, if you have concerns about your current situation, is your financial plan rational? Will it work in this crazy environment we're in? Give us a call. We can help you give answers to the questions that you have. We can help formulate a plan for you that will give you potentially all the income and retirement you need, because ultimately that's the key to successful retirement. Do you have enough income in retirement to effectively retire and maintain your lifestyle? So give us a call at 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, or go to our website, www.roncourser.com. You can put in your questions there or ask us to give you a call, and we will respond just as soon as we can once we find out you need some help or you have some questions that need answers.
Now, Ron, I know that I've talked to some people that say, well, neither one of my parents made it past 75, so I don't really need to plan much beyond 75 for myself. How can this be a pretty big mistake when we're talking about this issue of longevity?
Well, I don't think anybody knows how long they're going to live. That's the one thing. You know, I've run into people who've said that, who said, you know, my mom lived to be 96 and my dad lived to be 94. And my strange Uncle Charlie, he lived to be 112. So we have a lot of longevity. And I say, yeah, you get good genes in there, but we don't, you know, we really don't know if we're going to make it past the end of the day today, or if, you know, we're going to be blessed with a long life. Planning doesn't assume that you're going to have a short life or a long life. It assumes that you're going to live forever and you'll need money that long. So that's the key to the plan, is how do I make sure I have enough income in retirement? And that includes a lot of different things. We're going to touch on them now and what some of the biggest risks are. But I want people to understand something. We, on these programs, we talk about different things that you need to be aware of. And sometimes I think, wow, why don't we just be a little more positive? But talking about the things that you should be aware of is positive. I'm not telling you, the 14 things you shouldn't do, or the 3 reasons why I don't eat liver. Uh, I can actually come up with more reasons, but I think 3 is good. I don't have to beat it to death.
It's enough.
Yeah. So I understand all of that. So we're going to talk about different risks, because when you understand what's coming down the road a little bit, that makes it easier to plan for. If we never talked about what are some of the pitfalls that you have to be aware of? So what are some of the things that you need to understand? What are some of the things you have to be aware of? If we never talked about those, how would you ever be able to create a rational income plan of retirement that would work for you? That's based on you as the individual, not on what somebody said on TV or in some magazine. So that's what we're going to do today. That's what we try to do all the time. So if you have questions, give us a call at 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, and we'll do our very best to help you.
Ron, with longevity being such a factor that we do need to consider, we've talked before about how there's sort of different segments in planning, and there's the financial plan, very broad, kind of generic. There is an investment plan, a little bit more specific just to the assets that we have in the market. But what a lot of people seem to be missing that can help them address this number one concern of longevity is specifically the retirement plan. And a lot of people have maintained that investment plan just as they did when they were earning that paycheck, and really have not thought about making that transition or the new plan that's needed once they've made the transition to retirement. Really, that's critically crucial. That is the key element for addressing longevity, isn't it?
It is. And a lot of times when we meet folks for the first time, I ask a really simple question. Tell me about your retirement plan. And a lot of times what I hear is, well, I have a 401k. I have an IRA. I've got money in the bank. And I say, well, those are great things, but that really isn't a retirement plan. That's just kind of describing where you keep your money, what bucket, so to speak, you keep your money in. A retirement plan is the key to successful retirement planning. What do I mean by that? We have been taught as consumers of financial information, as savers, to always take a look at what's the lump sum, what are the big number that we need, because that's our retirement plan, and we always need more. And our firm is a little different. We do what we call reverse engineering. It's our position, it's just my opinion on how we try to help people, is that the key to a successful retirement plan is to first figure out if you have enough income in retirement to retire. Your income plan is the most basic, fundamental piece of information you could ever create or have to determine if you can retire, when you can retire, will you have enough income in retirement, and what kind of investment strategy you should use that really fits well with that retirement plan. So it's the income plan. Think about this. Everybody listening to today's program who's still working has an income plan. That income plan is based on getting up in the morning when the alarm goes off, getting dressed, have some breakfast, go to work, do your work, come home. Every 2 weeks, every week, every month, you get a paycheck. They take money out of your paycheck to pay taxes, put in Social Security and all that stuff. And you got X number of dollars, and hopefully you have more dollars left over at the end of the month than you had bills. That thing still happens in retirement, ladies and gentlemen. The difference is that you no longer have an employer. What you have is a bucket full of money that you've saved that is your new employer. It has to supply what you need to pay your bills, to go buy food, to do everything you need to do and maintain your lifestyle in retirement. So it's the income plan. That's the key building block on everything. Good income plans, solid, sound income plans, increase the likelihood of success in retirement more than any other single thing somebody could do. It's better than having the next hot stop, tip. It's better than having, well, I don't know, if you inherited $10 million, maybe that would be a little different, but it's the basic building block for everything. And it's important to understand in retirement, it's not your lump sum. It's, do you have enough income in retirement to retire? That's the key. That's the question we can help you answer. We do it for everybody who becomes part of our firm and we help in a retirement planning situation. We answer that key question. Do you have enough income in retirement to retire? If the answer is yes, you're going to be ecstatic. If the answer is no, maybe we can help you create that income plan that will provide protected income for you, pension, Social Security, in addition to other things, so that you have your lifestyle in retirement.
Ron, that plan that you're putting together, are there elements and aspects of it that you can identify here for listeners that are likely different, or things that if their plan has not specifically addressed this, if they have not discussed this as part of their plan, it's an indication that they might be missing this component, the specific retirement and income plan?
So I think there are. I think it gets down to, for all the people listening here, the most important thing is to have a conversation with somebody like us. And let us, I call it our doctor office questions, but we ask a lot of questions. And it's not because we're nosy, it's because we need to really understand who you are, what you're trying to accomplish, what are your values. You know, that's really important for somebody like us to understand. What is it you think is important? What are your values? What are the ways and things you think are needed in your life so that you can live the kind of life you want to, either spiritually or financially? What's important to you? We need to understand that. So whatever it is we try to create to help you lines up with who you are as a person. It lines up with who you are as a couple, as to what you want to do. Legacy planning, how you want to live your life. What kind of investments do you want to put in your plan? I mean, some people really want to invest in a way that doesn't harm the environment or have social impact negatively. So those are important things we need to understand. But ultimately, it gets down to first having the income plan, where we take what you're going to have coming in permanently here, so to speak, Social Security. And I know people say, well, I'm concerned about Social Security. My goodness, it's not going to be there. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're over 50, it is my humble opinion that you will continue to qualify for and get Social Security. They're not going to take it away from you. One of the basic reasons is that people who are on Social Security tend to vote. And if they tamper with our Social Security, we're going to vote this high-priced talent out of office. And that would be a real terrible thing for them to experience. So they're not going to do that. You know, I tell people, my children probably be okay. My grandchildren, I'm not sure. But anybody over 50, I think, can count on getting Social Security. They may make some changes, but you can do it. And the second part of what we call protected income, do you have a pension? Now, if you don't have a pension, we can help you create one with some of your life savings, because protected income coming in every month is so important, regardless if the markets go up, go down, sideways, you're healthy, you're not healthy. Having that protected income coming in to meet your number, what we always call, how much money do I need every month to live on and maintain my lifestyle? That's what we do. So if you're interested, if it makes sense to you to talk to somebody like us concerning your retirement plan, concerning your income plan, to help us get to know you, because we can help you. We really can. Design a program, a plan, an income plan, an investment strategy that meets your needs, that you like and understand. So give us a call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. Be more than happy to talk with you about these important things.
Again, Ron Courser willing to put that course to retirement plan together for you, with you, give you a snapshot of where you are currently. That alone is worth the small investment of time that it takes to get the plan put together, but we'll take it several steps further. We'll have that discussion with you, get to know you. We'll write down some specific goals, the things that you dream about, envision retirement and your financial future to be about. Get those in writing, and then with a certified financial planner's perspective and qualifications and guidance, help you to enumerate and list out the action items that you need to take, give you a timeline over which you should be working to accomplish those things, executable items, the steps to take to achieve those goals from where you are now. That is the plan, the Course to Retirement plan. And we'll put that together for you, with no cost, no obligation, free of charge, just for being a listener to this program and being willing to invest the time into your financial future, being able to take that seriously. That's the qualification. Pick up the phone, give a call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. Ron, I saw a kind of cute and I think on theme little one cell cartoon. I don't remember what brand it was of the cartoon, but it was basically a couple sitting with their advisor, and the couple is saying something along the lines of, well, we're retired, so we're going to take our life savings and go take the trip of a lifetime that we always dreamed about. What we're going to do on day 2, we have no idea. But basically their plan got them as far as day 1 of retirement. And I think as you're talking about here, longevity is something that we need to plan for, and the likelihood is that it increases all of these other risks that we are exposed to in our financial lives.
It does. And statistically, don't forget that women outlive men. So it is really important that any plan address a couple of issues that really focus on the wife, the mother, the lady in the marriage. And one of those things is income. What happens when the spouse dies, when the man dies? Well, we know for sure that there's going to be a Social Security payment that goes away. So that's a loss of income. It may be that depending on the pension plan, if they had one, the decisions they made, they could also take a loss in pay. So that's 2. What else might happen? Well, maybe that plan to build that cottage on Lake Michigan is halfway through, and all of a sudden, there's only one person left, and that's the wife. So something like that, making a big decision, can also be impacted when one of the spouses die. So those are the kinds of things that are very important to build into a plan. It maybe isn't the absolute focus, but it's part of the plan, because there's a lot of what ifs in life, and we know that. And yes, we all want to, I tell people I want to live to be 100. I say, I pray to God to live to be 100, but I also ask him that I'll know I'm 100 when I get to be 100, because why would you want to be 100 if you don't know? So that's just something that I've taken into consideration. So these are some things that are important to think about. So there's 2 questions you have to ask yourself. If longevity is the biggest thing that could impact me, what would happen if the markets go down 25, 35%? What happens to my life savings? And secondly, have I given any thought to how I'm going to pay these recurring expenses when rules change down the road? We know, for example, that every time there's a presidential election and a new regime comes into play, there's going to be changes. What are those changes? We're starting to see them now with the new administration. And some of that may be that a plan that was created 3-4 years ago and seemed to be working okay, maybe now it has to be adjusted. Maybe now you have to go in and get it tuned up, just like you would with your car. After 50,000 miles, you need to get in there and have somebody take a look at it, change the spark plugs, oil, and what have you. So maybe your plan needs a little tune-up, given what the world is like today. So if you want that tune-up, if you want us to see where you were trying to get to, does your plan still make sense today? Does it give you the protected income you need, given the current world and what you think is going to happen in the future? Give us a call, 616-301-2581. Be more than happy to talk with you, 616-301-2581.
Hey, Ron, just a minute or 2 left in this segment of the program. But I guess my question, and hearing you talk about these things, about these issues over the course of this program, and then today specifically as we are addressing what we are talking about as the number 1 risk to financial security, if the status quo, if the way that we have been taught and the way that most people are planning, if it worked so effectively, would we see so much doubt and worry about running out of money in retirement or running short on funds or income in retirement? Would we see that as a reality for, unfortunately, so many Americans? I feel as though if what we have been taught, if we followed those simple instructions, and if it really worked, we would not see such a prevalence of that fear and unfortunately that reality.
That's an interesting observation. And I think probably the way I respond to it was we make certain assumptions, whether we read about it in a newspaper, magazine, hear it on TV, we make certain assumptions about the future. And those assumptions can be based on rule of thumb, what we've been taught over the last 50 years, the last 10 years. And the key is that, do these assumptions line up with reality today? Do they line up? And sometimes they may, but most often what we see is that the assumptions that people make don't always line up with what probably is the reality. What do I mean by that? Sometimes I always ask this question about what kind of rate of return would you experience going forward if you could be happy with it over the next 3 to 5 years? That answer a lot of times is based on what's happened over the last 2 or 3 years. Now the markets are higher than they were 3 years ago, and except for that ugliness last March, the markets did okay with a lot of volatility. So sometimes people will say, well, I think we should get 10 to 15% annually. And I don't criticize people for that. It's just something I write down. It's one of those planning objectives. But the reality is that if we take a look at the last 20 years, because think about this, you're 65 years old, you're a man, you have potentially the ability to live to about 87. So you got about 20 years in retirement if nothing goes too badly wrong. So what happened over the last 20 years in the market? The markets have had a horrible time the last 20 years. The first 10 years from 2000 to 2010 were a wipeout. The next 10 have been a little better, but there's been some absolute horrendous experiences in the market. So we look at the last 20 years, the markets have not returned 10%. So a lot of it depends in planning what's your perspective, what kind of time horizon. That's what we can help you with. So give us a call, 616-301-2581. We'll give you a hand with that, 616-301-2581.
Well, I appreciate the candid answer to the question. Just kind of thought that crossed my mind as we are talking about these concerns and longevity being one that we all need to tackle. But again, coming up next week, International Women's Day, they do tend to outlive us a little bit, Ron. So tipping our cap to that fact and talking about longevity being a risk for all of us. But ladies listening to the program, may be something that you need to think about just a little bit more. We'll come back and we'll talk about some other factors in planning that you need to consider, specifically with that retirement income plan. The biggest expenses that you'll face into your financial future. That's absolutely something that the retirement income plan addresses and can help you tackle. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back here with Ron Courser, your certified financial planner, on your course to retirement in just a moment. And welcome back into the program. This is your Course to Retirement with Grand Rapids Certified Financial Planner, our guide on our Course to Retirement. He is president and founder of Ron Courser and Associates. Ron Courser here with us, CFP, and your resource, Grand Rapids, for that solid advice on what you need to be doing, thinking about, or addressing in your financial life to have a little bit more confidence moving into and throughout the future and through retirement. And Ron does make his time available. If you've got questions, if you've got concerns, if you've got items that you'd like to address, pick up the phone, give a call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. Ron, talking today about some of the major issues that we all need to address in our planning, talking about the difference between a generic financial plan, an investment plan, a retirement plan, talking about some of the factors that can impact our retirement plan, and moving into and through some of those specifically, I think longevity is a big issue that we must address. We've talked about that. And then you wanted to talk a little bit more in detail about some of the largest expenses that we might incur that longevity really is going to increase the likelihood of.
Yeah, there are really three big expenses that we face in retirement. And think about it this way: they're not necessarily expenses that we say, well, I'm going to go out and buy a Rolls Royce because I always wanted one. Not that kind of thing. But what are the big three? Number one is taxes. Taxes are nothing more than another bill in retirement. Number two is healthcare. Healthcare gets to be really expensive the older you get. And the other one, the silent thief, is inflation. So we're going to touch on all three of those now. So when you add up the cost of retirement and you're trying to figure out what to do to get through life, because you're going to live a long time, one of the biggest things you need to start to focus on is the tax situation. Now, the earlier in a retirement planning process, you can start to deal with the idea of taxes, particularly taxes going up, the better off you're going to be. It's like a lot of things. The sooner you kind of face a problem or a potential situation, the better off you'll be in trying to find a solution. So taxes are an interesting creature. One of the questions I always ask people when they come in, and I do this even with existing clients, is what do you think over the next 5 to 10 years? Is what you pay in tax going to be about the same, be less, or will it be more?
More.
Most people say, I think more. And then I'll ask why. And they say, well, look at what they're doing down in Washington. And that's all I really need to know, that we're on the same page. But think about taxes this way. The bulk of saving that we do as citizens of the United States who have savings is we save in tax deferred accounts, most notably IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, those kinds of things. Yes, there are Roth accounts, but they're a much smaller proportion of the total retirement investment pie. So we got a tax deduction by putting money in. So one of the questions I ask people is, what's your real tax rate? Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the things that you absolutely must know in trying to figure out how to create the most tax efficient retirement plan you can, most tax efficient income plan you can in retirement, is to know your real tax rate. And I'm going to kind of give you a hint on how to figure that out. You can ask your tax person, because we're in tax season, it is. But if you really want to know, just take the denominator is adjusted gross income, whatever you had, and the denominator is what you actually pay in federal tax. So you divide those up and you come up with a percentage. Knowing that percentage is critical because that will help you make good, solid decisions on how to deal with taxes in retirement. One of the best ways to do that, particularly if you have more time or you assume you're going to live 20 years. Now, whether you're 40 and you're doing this or whether you're 70 and doing this, if you assume you're going to live another 20 years, if God will let you, then planning on reducing your tax burden makes great sense. It's never too late to do that. One of the best approaches you can take going into this is, how do I start to accumulate money and life savings with a minimum of tax? One of those accounts, ladies and gentlemen, is one of my favorite accounts. It's called a Roth IRA. Now, anybody who is working now, anybody who has income under about $196,000 can deposit $6,000 into a Roth IRA if you're under 50 and $7,000 if you're over 50. So here's an example. Client had $35,000 in a CD and money market in the bank, earning very little. And they had income that would allow them to put money into a Roth IRA. Now, you can put money into a Roth IRA even if you're in a company-sponsored employer plan, as long as you meet certain income restrictions. So most people can. And my suggestion to this couple was, they were 53 and 54. I said, why don't you just put $7,000 each in a Roth IRA? When you're 59 and a half, you're going to be covered with that money. You'll be able to take it all out. But the key is, with Roth, you can always take out what you put in. You just have to leave the growth. So it's kind of like a bank CD on steroids, because you have the ability to earn a little more. So one of the best ways to approach the whole issue of, I think taxes are going to go up in the future, is to start to create tax-free money for yourself. And one way is to use a deposit strategy, putting money into a Roth annually for a husband and a wife. Second way to do it, it concerns a Roth again, is you're allowed to convert. If you have money in a regular IRA you've gotten a tax deduction on, you're allowed to convert as much or as little as you want annually, separate from a deposit Roth strategy. Excuse me. You're allowed to create a Roth conversion strategy where you take money in an IRA account that's always going to be taxed, and you move it into a Roth account. Now you'll pay tax on it this year. So that's why you need somebody to help you figure out the tax consequence of doing that. That's why it's really important to know what your real tax rate is. Because it's not so much important about brackets, but what your real tax rate is, to know how much it's going to cost to take $1 out of an IRA and put it into a Roth account. So those are two of the most best ways I know that everybody can do, whether you're 40 or 70. If you think you're going to live a while, you can do this. You can start it now if it makes some sense. So dealing with taxes is always going to be important. A second way to do things is simply to invest in things that are more tax efficient. Mutual funds are not necessarily the most tax efficient way to invest. Exchange traded funds are. That's beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but that's another idea to take a look at your investment strategies. Are you using tax efficient strategies, securities in taxable accounts, or can you make some changes? So I've covered a lot of ground here in the last 3 or 4 minutes. So why don't you do this? If you're interested in looking at how do you create a Roth strategy, how do you deal with taxes going forward in the future, give us a call at 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, and we will give you all the help humanly possible to put you in a position to make the most effective, efficient decisions when it comes to taxes for your retirement lifestyle.
Ron, I've got to imagine that you're hearing maybe more about this than ever before right now, and that there's actually some excitement, or maybe a better word, some urgency on the minds of many savers and investors to go ahead and finally be a little bit proactive and forward thinking about our taxes.
It is, and a lot of it's coming from some of our older clients, particularly ones that are in the RMD stage of life, the retired minimum distribution. And one of the things more and more clients are using is called a qualified charitable deduction. What does that mean? Okay, if you've been taking out RMDs and you still have to do it, or you finally hit magical age 72 and you have to take out a certain percentage of all your tax deferred accounts, 401s, IRAs, one of the options is to transfer that to a charity. Why does that work? Let's say you have an IRA and you have to take out $6,000 this year to satisfy your requirement distribution in this example. If you just take it out and we send you the money, it's going to be taxed, probably taxed around 20%, federal, state, whatever. And a lot of people don't need the money in retirement. They don't need that extra income, but they have to pay tax on it. So one way to avoid this is to send it. You can do up to $100,000 if you're over 7.5, is you can send that RMD, that money out of your IRA, to a charity, a church, if you're still tithing, some other kind of tax-free charitable organization. You can just send that to them. It qualifies and satisfies the IRS for taking money out of your IRA, and you don't claim it as income. So you've kind of handled two issues here with one easy way. Most people who are charity minded, I tell them, I don't think God cares where the money comes from. I just think he likes it when you're able to give back to somebody. So whether you get a deduction or don't get a deduction for charity is irrelevant. You're saving tax money by avoiding the required minimum distribution and the tax you'll pay on that. So that's another option, particularly if you're over 7.5, that can make great sense for a lot of people.
So as we're looking at this, really never too early or never too late to be proactive about this particular question and issue. Ron, as you stated, probably one of our largest known expenses in retirement But even after retirement, as we are transferring assets on, this can potentially be one of the largest legacy expenses, probably is, in fact, the largest legacy expense, hands down.
It is. And with the rule changes that made on inherited IRAs, it used to be that if you passed on your IRA to a son or daughter or grandchild, they could just take those distributions that they have to make every year for their whole lifetime. Well, that law has changed. And now, if you're over the age of majority, unless you're a spouse or you're somebody with a disability or you're young, you can't stretch those distributions on the inherited IRA anymore past 10 years. That account has to be liquidated in 10 years. So if you have legacy concerns, why not pay the tax now for the money you want to pass on to your child or grandchild and give that money? You can do it in a Roth IRA conversion, things like that. Even in a Roth, they have to liquidate that account within 10 years. But what you're doing is you're paying the tax in a very low tax environment right now, and you're protecting your children and grandchildren down the road for a while. So it makes great sense to take a look at that also. There's ways to skin this animal, so to speak. It just gets down to us knowing what your current situation is, what you're trying to accomplish, and then creating a strategy that helps you get there. So if you want some help in getting there, wherever there is for you, give us a call at 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. We'd be more than happy to help you because that's what we do for folks. We try to help to make sure that we can get through the next day, the next year, the next decade, the rest of our life in the most financially strong way we can.
A local resource here and available for you, ladies and gentlemen, a certified financial planner, a CFP that will help you plan proactively and identify those strategies to better control that tax liability where possible, minimize it, reduce it, potentially even in certain cases eliminate some of the tax liability. There are ways to do that. You need to speak with a professional that's got that forward-looking perspective. Ron Courser and his team there at Ron Courser and Associates here to help. 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581, the number to call. And Ron, we talked about that retirement income plan. Obviously, tax is a large part of that. You're including this as part of that planning process and part of that plan and recommendations that you put together for folks.
We are. That's an important part, but there's a couple other important parts too. The next one we always talk about is healthcare. Healthcare is not free. It really isn't. It costs money. And so most people face the dilemma of if I retire or I have a job separation before 65, I have to find healthcare to get me to the Medicare age of 65. Those people who are fortunate enough to get to 65 and still be employed, then they get into the Medicare system. So how do we handle that? In our firm, my wife, Nancy, and her staff takes care of the healthcare portion for our clients. If you're somebody who needs healthcare coverage and you're not Medicare eligible yet, she can help find the best plan, both drug and healthcare, to suit your needs, that it fits your budget, because it's always a budget issue too. But she can help you do that. If you're over 65 or you hit 65 and you're getting to be a Medicare eligible, she is a great resource to figure out which Medicare plan is best for you. A regular Medicare plan, an Advantage plan, Medicare gap insurance, and then what drug programs should we put together. It's not a 20-minute conversation because it's important that it fits you and does what you want it to do. So healthcare issues are incredibly important to deal with sooner than later. It's been estimated that a couple who retires at 65 and lives to full retirement age, say 83 to 85, somewhere near, will spend at least $200,000, if not more, just on basic healthcare coverage, Medicare, drug coverage, and all of that stuff. So it's an enormously complicated but enormously big expense in retirement that we can help people with. Because if you can make a good decision today, then what happens when the plans change every year? And they do. Part of what we do with our clients, my wife does it with her staff, is to help people make adjustments to their plan every year to give them the most cost-effective coverage. It's incredibly important. She's helped people who were paying $500 a month for their Medicare plan and put them to something, 80, 90% less. I'm not saying she'll do that every time, but she's good enough to take a look at that. And she knows enough about the Medicare system and the healthcare system to help people. So give us a call. You can call and schedule a time with my wife, Nancy. She does the healthcare part of our company that we help people with. So call Nancy, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. Schedule an appointment with her. Talk to her associate, Lauren, and they can put you on a calendar, and she will answer all your questions. She's that good. Yeah, I know. I'm bragging on my wife, but it's true, so I'm allowed to brag.
Hey, that'll go a long way for you, Ron. So at work and at home, of course. 616-301-2581, the number to call. And I encourage you to do that as well. We've had Nancy on the program before, and she absolutely does a wonderful job and certainly knows her stuff when it comes to the healthcare side of things. So healthcare not free, and you want to be proactive and plan for that as best as possible. Nancy can help you with that side of your planning. 616-301-2581. So Ron, again, this plan, the retirement income plan that we specifically need to address the number one concern, longevity. In order to do that, we're covering some of the most common and the largest expenses in retirement: taxes, healthcare. What's next on your list that this plan will help us tackle?
Next one is the one everybody knows about. It's called inflation. Sometimes I think it's outflation because it's outrageous, but it's inflation.
Another one I bet you're hearing an awful lot about right now.
Yeah, people are frightened. A lot of people are frightened with all the money that the government's printing and throwing against the wall to see if they can solve problems. And supposedly we don't have a lot of inflation as the way it's measured, but folks need to understand the way they measure inflation, the CPI. Understand that the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, does not include energy and it does not include food. They've taken those two out. So guess what? Energy is expensive and growing more expensive, and the cost of food is absolutely going through the roof in times. So anybody who goes to the store and shops on a regular basis understands that. But inflation is a real big problem because over 10, 20, or 30 years, the value of the dollar continues to be eroded, continues to go down. So how do you deal with inflation? Most people in our industry say, well, the only way to deal with it is put the money in the stock market because the stock market will help you overcome inflation. And there's some truth to that. As long as the stock market doesn't help you lose some of your life savings. Because think about this. If you have $1 million, you've saved it, you've done well. And inflation is whatever you want to call it. If you have a 20% or 30% loss in your portfolio, have you stayed ahead of inflation? You got less money now than you started with. And inflation is still eating away at those dollars. So one of the first ways to deal with inflation is to make sure that in your investment strategy, once you've got your income plan together, to make sure your investment strategy lines up with how you look and feel about risk and about losing money. Here's a key question everybody has to answer. How would you feel if your portfolio, your investment strategy lost 10%, 30%, 50%? How would you feel about that? How you answer that question, ladies and gentlemen, will determine a great deal as to how much risk you should build into your investment strategy. Most people say, well, I don't want to lose a dime. So then your only option is to keep it in a bank, earning very little, or put it in that proverbial 3-pound coffee can and bury it in the backyard. But if you bury it in the backyard in a 3-pound coffee can, what's the risk? That you'll get dementia and forget where you buried it, and then it's a total loss. So you have to be aware of these kinds of things. Inflation is a silent killer. It really is. And the way you deal with inflation, number one, is to have an income plan first. You got to make sure that all the income you need every month has already been put in place. And then you can make adjustments to that to increase that monthly or annual income 3, 4, or 5% each year so that you can consider the effects of inflation on your spending. So the first part is not to just throw money at the stock market. The first part is very basic: create the income plan, get the permanent, predictable, protected kind of income going, Social Security, pension, and create a protected income stream of income with a portion of your life savings. And once you do that, then you can make adjustments with your investment plan to maybe increase that monthly allowance that you're giving yourself every 2, 3, or 4% a month. That's how the most rational and most safety conscious people deal with inflation.
Ron, we're obviously going to have some other factors that come along, some surprises, some things. You started the program saying that planning is dealing with what we can predict and then sometimes what we can't predict. We're obviously going to have some of those things that we cannot predict. But if we tackle these three big expenses with our retirement income plan, map them out and plan and expect them, I think that you're saying that that'll go a long way in helping us build some financial security and confidence and helping us to address longevity.
Well, let me put it that way, because I think the answer to that is yes. We live in Michigan. We're experiencing winter. We know that in last July, we knew winter was coming, but it was still warm and nice and we weren't worried about it. But in October, we knew winter was getting a little closer. So what do? We prepare for it. People in Michigan are used to this. We prepare for the end of the world when it comes to snowfall, particularly in West Michigan. So I make sure the snowblower works. I make sure the furnace is working in good operation. I make sure that we have enough insulation if we have to make changes there. We do those kinds of things to prepare for winter. We take out the winter clothes, make sure the winter boots don't have a hole in them. We make preparation for the winter, and we prepare for a really bad, ugly, horrible winter. Now, if that happens and we prepared for it, we're going to be okay. We prepared for the bad, ugly, horrible winter. But if we get a winter that's less harsh, that's more mild, and we have prepared for the end of the winter world, is that still a bad thing? I mean, we prepared for the worst and it didn't happen. So part of this whole issue of dealing with longevity, of dealing with healthcare and inflation and taxes, is to prepare, so to speak, for the worst. If it doesn't happen, we're that much farther ahead. And I'm not talking about, let's just say we're going to have 80% inflation year over year and healthcare is going to break. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, let's plan for a hard winter. And if it doesn't happen in our financial planning, we're that much farther ahead.
Well, I think that absolutely makes sense. And when we look at it in the perspective of financial planning, Ron, maybe it's just me, I would much rather have a plan that I've planned out to live through age 120 and beyond, and then that's not the case, than have a plan where I've really only accounted for making it through age 80, but I end up living to 100 or 105. That could leave us short in a whole different kind of situation, whole different perspective. So a lot of people have done a lot of really good work, a lot of really hard work in saving and accumulating assets. But I think, Ron, from here on out, the perspective that we need to have, it changes a little bit. And it's not just about investment management and growth and shooting for the highest returns. It's about making the best use of each and every one of our dollars for retirement, making sure that we keep as much of our money as possible, and identifying and addressing some of these big risks and big expenses that we're going to face in all the years to come.
Yeah, it's a really good summary. And one of the ways to look at it is think about this in terms of a football game. So when you're working all the way up to that point in retirement, that's halftime. You've made it half the way through. But we all know that the game at halftime, who knows what's going to end up in the third and fourth quarter. Retirement is the third and fourth quarter of that football game of life, if you will. It doesn't matter what's happened. It does, but it doesn't matter so much how we start the game and where we go to halftime. It's how we finish. How are you going to finish the game? Because, in football, your team could be down 3 touchdowns at halftime. Does that really matter? No, just tell me what happened at the end of the game. That's what I want to know. And it's the same in retirement. It doesn't matter. It does, but it really doesn't matter that you've saved all this money in the first 2 quarters of life, so to speak. It's halftime. Now the real game begins, doesn't it? What's happening in the third and fourth quarter? That's where we can be a great assistance to everybody. We can help make sure that you finish that game really in good shape and on top in the third and fourth quarter. So give us a call, 616-301-2581, 616-301-2581. Let's move from halftime to the end of the game and be successful. So give us a call, 616-301-2581.
Always a pleasure every time we get the opportunity to speak with Grand Rapids CFP certified financial planner Ron Courser here on Your Course to Retirement, and making the offer to put that course to retirement plan together for you, along with you, so that you can have that direction, you can have that guidance, you can have the understanding of the steps that you need to take in order to achieve your financial goals. Pick up the phone, give a call, 616-301-2581. Ron, always a pleasure. We appreciate your time.
I've enjoyed this. So everybody out there, take care, drive carefully, have a blessed Sunday, and I'll talk to you next week.
Tune in to Ron Courser's full radio program, A Course to Retirement, Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. on WOOD, and visit roncourser.com for many valuable resources, including other great episodes of Your Course to Retirement.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor.
Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group is solely an indication that the financial advisor has attended training provided by Ed Slott and Company, passed biannual examinations on material covered at conferences and in webinars, and met other membership requirements, and does not constitute an endorsement of any kind. Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group members pay a fee for the educational programs that allow them to be included in the Ed Slott's Elite IRA Advisor Group. Membership does not guarantee investment success. Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Withdrawals or growth from annuities may be taxable as ordinary income in the year it is taken. Individuals should review contracts for specific details of the product's features and costs. Early withdrawals may subject the owner to penalties, fees, or taxes. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.